What is JavaScript used for? JavaScript is used in, in many things. Not too many, but a couple of things. The common ones include web application development, to build a website or web application if you prefer to call it that. We use JavaScript to build web applications. Almost every website out there has JavaScript codes, right? So it is so commonly used in web applications development. JavaScript is also used to build mobile apps. If you have heard of React Native before, it is one of the JavaScript based solutions for building mobile applications. JavaScript is also used to build desktop applications using, for example, Electron.js, a desktop solution for building cross-platform desktop applications. But none of these will be possible, or let me say easy, if you don't understand the core JavaScript, right? This is why we start from the core JavaScript, understand the language itself at that basic level, that foundation we need before we start talking about building real-life applications using JavaScript. Okay, with that in mind, let's talk about how we write the JavaScript codes. To write a JavaScript code, whether it's a JavaScript or whichever language, we usually make use of code editors. Now you can write the code without code editor, but for convenience, to make things life easy for us, we oftentimes use code editors. A code editor is just a piece of software for writing codes, as the name implies. And in JavaScript world, one of the most popular code editors is Visual Studio Code, oftentimes called VS Code. VS Code is free. All you have to do is go to Google and search for Visual Studio Code. You click to land on their website. I've already opened the website, and you download and install Visual Studio Code in your computer. Visual Studio is available for Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. So depending on your operating system, you download and install Visual Studio Code. The installation process is actually straightforward. Pardon me, I'm not going to cover that. I already have Visual Studio Code installed and set up, but it is so simple and so straightforward. If you need further assistance doing that, please just do a Google search. Maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes video can explain that, show you step by step how you install Visual Studio Code. When you have Visual Studio Code set up, let's talk about how we make use of it to write codes. The code that we are going to write will be saved in files, right? For convenience, let's make a folder that will contain all those files for our codes. I will go to desktop. You can create this folder anywhere you like. I will create a folder. Let me call it JS Basics. Just an empty folder. Then open your code editor. I will open Visual Studio Code. What we want to do is to open that folder in Visual Studio Code, so we can start creating some files, write some codes there, and save it in that folder. To open the folder, you click on File. The user interface of Visual Studio Code might be different depending on your operating system, whether you're Mac or Windows, but the idea is similar, it's the same thing. You click on File, you click Open. Then locate the folder that we created, select it and click Open. Now that the folder is opened, you notice these other folders. These are not the folders we created, right? So just ignore them for now. Just ignore them actually. They are added by the VS Code. So we have this folder open. To add a file to that folder, you click on this icon that says new file. Click on the icon and you can name this file whatever you want. Let me say intro.js. Take note, .js, this is how you save a JavaScript file. This is how you say this is a JavaScript file with .js, right? For example, if this were to be HTML, we say .html. If it is Java, we say .java. But JavaScript is .js. You hit enter. We have created a file. You can select the file by clicking on it and we can start writing codes. Of course, this is not a valid code. Alright, so that's how you create a folder. You open a folder in VS Code and you create a file. Inside the file, when you select the file, you can start writing your codes. Before we start writing code, let's talk about how we run the codes. I mean, when you have written all these codes, how do you execute it? There are different ways to run a JavaScript code, but let's focus on what is going to make it easy for us, right? Assuming this were to be a web application, most likely you are going to display something on the browser. But remember that we are focusing on core JavaScript, the same JavaScript that can be used in web development, mobile development, desktop, whatever thing, JavaScript programming. So we are not going to focus on a specific area like Node.js, web development, and all that. To run the code in Visual Studio Code, we can make use of an extension. Extension is just a piece of program that helps us do certain things. For example, we can install this extension that will help us to run our JavaScript code inside Visual Studio Code. To install an extension, you just have to click on this extensions icon. You click on that, we search for the extension. There are so many extensions. We search for Code Runner. That is the extension we are looking for. And click here to see the details. This extension helps us to run our code. You click on install. The extension is installed. We can go ahead and close it and then go back to our file. There is one last thing we need to do before we can actually run our code using Code Runner extension, before we can run our JavaScript code. So behind the scenes, Code Runner actually makes use of Node.js to run JavaScript codes. So this is one last thing we need to do. We need to install Node.js. Please note that we are not going to learn Node.js. We are not trying to learn Node.js. We are not going to write one line of Node.js specific JavaScript. However, for us to make use of Code Runner, we need to download and install Node.js. The easiest way to actually do this is to go to Google and search how to install Node.js in your system depending on your operating system. It is so straightforward, right? For example, for Windows, you can just use the Windows installer and click next and add Node.js in your path, in your environment variables, and you are good to go. For Mac OS, it is also straightforward. So go to nodejs.org and download and install Node.js, or better still, just search on Google. It is straightforward how to install Node.js in your system. With Node.js installed and with the Code Runner extension, we are good to open our file now and continue. With the extension installed, we can easily run our code by, you go to the file that you want to run, you right click anywhere inside that file and click on run code. When you do that, you are going to get, actually there's nothing here, these are just part of what the program has displayed here. We did not write any of this, and don't worry about what these things do. When we write something, it is going to appear, or when we output something, it's going to appear somewhere here. So that is how you install the code runner, the extension for running the code, and that is how you run your code, by right clicking and click run. To close this output window, you can just click on the close icon. Okay, now let's go to the next thing, which is how do we display something in JavaScript. Before we go into coding proper, let's talk about how to display something in JavaScript, how to output something. By output something, I mean, for example, we have 1 plus 2. If we run this code now, I will click on File. First, make sure to save the file. Make sure to save your changes. I'll click on File and I'll click Save. Right? Actually, you can select autosave so that whenever you make changes and leave the file, you move your focus away from the file, it will be automatically saved. Better still, you can apply autosave to all the files that you are going to create by going to settings in VS Code. You click settings, you search for settings. Settings to search for is autosave. This is the settings. You make sure that it is not off. You select by on focus change. This will automatically save the file when we move our mouse, or when we move our focus away from the file. So with that done, let's go back here. Right, if I click on file again, you can see that autosave is applied to this file automatically. So we have 1 plus 2. If we go ahead and run this file, remember you right click inside the file and click run code. You can see that we don't have 3 here, but 1 plus 2 is 3. So we have written a very simple code, but we are not outputting anything. To actually output this, let me show you. Let me show you an example using Python. We are not doing Python here, but this is easy to understand. In Python, to output something, you can say print, and inside this braces, inside this parentheses, is where you put whatever it is that you want to output. For example, you can put 1 plus 2. This is in Python. In PHP, we can say echo and the thing we want to output. But in JavaScript, there are different ways to do this in JavaScript. But for our use case, let's make use of console.log. This is how you output something in JavaScript, also called JS. So I will actually delete the other ones. With this, if we move away from the file, it will be automatically saved. We don't need to go here and click save based on our settings, right? And we run this code one more time. You will see that now we have the output, which is the output of 1 plus 2. Now, this does not only apply to 1 plus 2. For example, let's say console.log. We output what is called string. I'll just put some words here. Hello world. Hello world. So this will output whatever is inside the braces, inside this quote. We get to string later. This is an example of what we call string in JavaScript. If I save, and I'll go ahead and right click and run, you can see that we have both tree and hello world, which is the same thing. that we have here. So this is one of the various ways to output something in JavaScript, and for the most part we are going to make use of console.log.